They call it the grind. That endless soul-crushing routine that chews up spaces and spits them out as empty husks, if they're lucky. Most aren't. I'm William Bishop, and I've been grinding for almost 30 years. 30 years hauling scrap, dodging corporate regulators, and staring into the black abyss that passes for scenery out here in the deep. It's a life sentence, measured out in light years and punctuated by the hiss of failing seals and the hum of drives that always seem on the verge of giving out. And the pay, just enough to keep you running, just enough to keep you chained to the wheel. Nova Galactic sees to that. We were between contracts, drifting in the ass end of nowhere, somewhere in the Perseus arm. It had been weeks since we last saw a friendly face, if you could call the corporate suits who hire us friendly. Weeks of recycled air, the same three faces, and the same flickering lights of the Farseeker. A ship as tired and worn as its captain. My crew, if you could even call them that. They are more like ghosts than humans at this point. Just 3 more souls ground down by the vast indifference of space. There's O'Malley, our chief engineer, an old-timer who's seen it all and trusts none of it, especially not the suits back on Titan. He spends most of his time in the engine room, muttering to himself and the machines, probably the only conversations he enjoys these days. Then there's Larson, security, if you can believe it. Built like a lunar lander, all hard angles and silent glares, but mostly just keeps to himself, running simulations on his datapad, probably dreaming of a war that ended before we even left the cradle. And finally, Dr. Walter MacDonald, our supposed xenolinguist. Though what languages he expects to find out here besides corporate bullshit is beyond me. He is a strange one, that MacDonald, always peering at his screens, searching for patterns in the static, muttering about cosmic symphonies and the music of the spheres. A mind like his isn't meant for the deep black. It needs stimulation. The ship was quiet, which meant either they were asleep or things were about to get noisy in ways I didn't appreciate. My gut, usually a reliable instrument, was churning with something other than the recycled nutrient paste that passed for breakfast. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, not that I could remember what I'd imagined anymore. Back on Earth, before the Exodus, before the corporations carved up the solar system and sold it off piecemeal, maybe I'd had dreams. Now all that was left was the grind and the ghosts. Ghosts of people I'd known, missions gone sideways, and the ever-present hum of the ship. A constant reminder that I was one loose bolt away from becoming another statistic, another lost soul swallowed by the black. I ran a diagnostic on my arm. It was a Rourke Model 5, a relic from the Titan foundries, all chrome and carbon fiber, a damn sight more reliable than the flesh and bone it replaced. It ached sometimes, a phantom pain that reminded me of a plasma blast and a long drop into a methane sea. The core are always quick to replace a limb, but the scars on your soul, those you carry alone. Cybernetics are commonplace now. Hell, most folks outside the belt have at least one augment. Makes you wonder what it means to be human anymore when half your body is made in a factory and your thoughts are filtered through a neural implant. We are data points now, assets to be managed, and when our values dip too low, we're scrapped for parts like everything else. My implant buzzed, an incoming priority communication. Probably another nickel and dime job hauling stellar wreckage or some corpo's lost cargo. Still, a job was a job. I patched it through to the bridge. The face of Mr. Beaumont, a Nova Galactic middle manager I'd had the displeasure of dealing with before, flashed onto the screen. He was all smooth edges and corporate jargon, the kind of guy who probably never set foot outside a climate-controlled office, let alone on a ship like mine. "Captain Bishop," he said, his voice a carefully modulated baritone. "We have a situation that requires your particular expertise." Situation was corpo speak for shit show, and particular expertise usually meant no one else was dumb enough to take the job. But I played along. "I'm listening, Mr. Beaumont." "A new artifact has been discovered," Beaumont began, his image flickering slightly on the comm screen. "Orbiting a black hole designated Abyss 927. He paused, letting the name hang in the air. The same black hole where the research vessel the Pioneer vanished a few months back. I knew the story, of course. It had been all over the news. Wild speculation, conspiracy theories, the usual chatter. Nova Galactic naturally denied any involvement, but the rumors persisted. Something about an energy field the Pioneer was studying. Beaumont continued, his tone shifting from corporate pleasantries to something more serious. The Pioneer was attempting to analyze the artifact's energy field when they disappeared. Whatever they found, they didn't get a chance to report it. He leaned forward, his face filling the screen. Your mission, Captain, is to succeed where they failed. We need that data. He outlined the plan, careful to avoid any specifics about the artifact itself, focusing instead on the importance of the data it was emitting. A unique energy signature, he called it, with the potential to revolutionize. Well, let's just say it's of significant interest to the corporation. Our job was to deploy a set of newly developed resonance probes. Beaumont described them as equipped with the latest sensor technology and shielded to withstand the extreme conditions near Abyss 927. These probes, designed specifically for this mission, would penetrate the artifact's energy field and transmit the data directly back to the Far Seeker. We believe this data could hold the key to understanding the artifact's nature, Beaumont emphasized, and potentially unlocking new forms of energy. He made it clear that this was a high-priority mission. As a final point, he added, "And we'll be providing you with some experimental equipment to assist in the deployment, called consciousness field dampeners. We believe them to be essential for the crew's safety when near the artifact." Field dampeners, a new tech designed to counteract some anomaly associated with the artifact. Sounded like a load of bantha fodder to me, but I wasn't in a position to argue. We were running low on credits, and beggars can't be choosers, not out here in the black. "Fine," I said, "we'll take the job, but I want hazard pay, double our usual rate, and full disclosure on this artifact. No more corporate secrets." Beaumont hesitated for a moment, probably running the numbers in his head. "Agreed, Captain. We'll transmit the coordinates and the preliminary data on the artifact. Be advised, this mission is classified. Discretion is paramount." I called the crew to the bridge. They looked as thrilled as I felt. I filled them in on the mission, glossing over the parts about the missing research vessel and the experimental dampeners. No need to spook them more than necessary. We were professionals, after all. We'd faced worse, hadn't we? "A black hole," O'Malley grumbled, stroking his greasy beard. "You're taking us to a bloody black hole? Have you gone space mad, Bishop?" "It's just a retrieval op, Mac," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "In and out, quick and clean." "That's what they said about the Pioneer," Larson mumbled, his eyes fixed on the deck. He was always the quiet one, but he had a way of cutting through the bullshit. MacDonald, on the other hand, seemed almost excited. "Fascinating," he murmured, his eyes gleaming. "An artifact of unknown origin, emitting a unique energy signature. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Or a one-way trip to oblivion," O'Malley muttered. I pulled up the data on the artifact. It was a large, ring-shaped structure orbiting the black hole at a safe distance. The scan showed intricate geometric patterns on its surface, and it was emitting an energy field that interfered with most sensors. It was definitely alien, and definitely not something you'd find in a standard salvage yard. "All right, people," I said, clapping my hands together. "Let's prep for jump. Mac, get the FTL drive spooled up. Larson, run a full systems check and make sure our pea shooters are in working order. MacDonald, see if you can make any more sense of this thing. And somebody get me some real coffee, not that synth calf crap." The jump to Abyss 927 was uneventful, if you could call hurtling through a distorted space-time tunnel uneventful. I'd done it hundreds of times, but it never got any easier on the stomach. We emerged into the system with a jolt, and there it was, the black hole, a swirling vortex of darkness surrounded by a halo of blinding light. And orbiting it, like some ancient cosmic sentinel, was the Taurus. A colossal ring, 500 kilometers in diameter, it dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The ring, impossibly black, absorbed the light from the accretion disk. It was as if a piece of the void itself had been solidified and sculpted into a perfect circle. The surface was covered in those intricate patterns, etched deep into the alien material, like the universe's most complex circuit board. It was beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way, and it was calling to us. I could feel it. We were moths drawn to the deadliest flame in the galaxy, and I, William Bishop, captain of this rust bucket, was leading the way. The Taurus dominated every sensor reading, every viewport. It hung there, a vast, light-absorbing disk against the swirling, incandescent chaos of the accretion disk. Even from this distance, the scale of it was difficult to comprehend. 500 kilometers of perfect, seamless black. It was like staring into the eye of a god who didn't blink and didn't care. "MacDonald, give me something useful," I asked, my voice a little hoarse. "The energy readings are erratic," MacDonald replied. "Not just fluctuating, but cycling. There are patterns within patterns, like nested gyres in a vortex, but they're asymmetrical, non-repeating. And the emissions, they're not just electromagnetic. We're picking up gravitational distortions, temporal anomalies, even what looks like modulated neutrino bursts. It's as if the artifact is rewriting the rules of physics around it, then rewriting the rewrite." He tapped a specific graph on his screen, highlighting a series of bizarre spikes and troughs. "See here? This should be a smooth curve, a predictable decay rate. Instead, it's oscillating, almost like it's searching for a specific frequency or a specific configuration." "Configuration of what?" I pressed. He zoomed in on a section of the graph, revealing even more intricate detail. "It's hard to say. Imagine a combination lock, but with 1,000,000 tumblers, and each tumbler is a fundamental constant of the universe. That's what this feels like. It's like the artifact is trying to find the right combination to unlock something. Or maybe relock it. The scale of it, though, it's beyond anything I can comprehend. The energy involved would dwarf a supernova." He looked up at me, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration in his eyes. "Whatever this thing is, Captain, it's not just technology, it's something else." "Approaching designated scanning distance," Larson announced, his voice, as always, devoid of any emotion. He was like a machine himself, all stoicism and efficiency. I envied him that, at this moment. "Hold position," I ordered. "Let's see what these dampeners can do." The consciousness field dampeners, courtesy of Nova Galactic, were supposed to be our shield against whatever the Taurus was throwing out. They were bulky, uncomfortable things, strapped to our chests like some kind of high-tech corset. According to the minimal documentation provided, they emitted a counter-frequency that was supposed to neutralize the artifact's influence on the human brain. I wasn't entirely convinced. "Dampeners are active," O'Malley reported from the engine room. "But I'm getting some strange readings. They're drawing a lot of power, more than they should be. And the core temperature is fluctuating." "Keep an eye on it, Mac," I said. "We don't need any surprises." "No promises," he grunted. We spent the next few hours running scans, sending out probes and trying to make sense of the Taurus. The closer we got, the stranger things became. The ship's systems started acting erratically. The dampeners, meanwhile, were working overtime, emitting a noise that vibrated through the deck plates. And then there was the mark. I first noticed it on MacDonald's hand while he was fiddling with one of the sensor arrays. A faint, purplish discoloration, like a bruise, but with a geometric pattern that mirrored the designs on the Taurus. "MacDonald, what's that on your hand?" I asked, pointing at the mark. He looked at it, turning his hand over, studying it with that same unsettling detachment. "It appears to be a somatic reaction to the energy field," he said, as if he were describing a particularly interesting lab result. "Fascinating. Fascinating," I repeated, my voice rising in alarm. "You've got an alien tattoo and you think it's fascinating?" "It's a perfectly natural response," he said, still examining the mark. "The field is interacting with our bioelectrical systems, creating a resonance pattern. It's quite remarkable, really. I didn't like it. Not one bit. I ordered everyone to check themselves for similar marks. Larson reported a small patch on his forearm. O'Malley predictably refused to comply, grumbling about corpo mind control and snake oil salesmen. I decided to let it slide for now. We had bigger problems. The headaches started soon after. Dull, throbbing aches that intensified whenever we got closer to the Taurus. Then came the nausea, the disorientation, and the irritability. The crew was on edge, snapping at each other, arguing over nothing. O'Malley's paranoia, never far from the surface, was now in full bloom. He started accusing everyone of being in on some grand conspiracy, muttering about Nova Galactic turning us into lab rats. He barricaded himself in the engine room, refusing to come out. "They're using us!" he shouted through the closed door, his voice distorted by the intercom. "They knew about this thing. They knew what it would do to us." "Mac, nobody's using us," I tried to reason with him, my head pounding. "Just open the door. We need to talk." "Go away, Bishop. You're one of them. You're all in on it." I exchanged a worried look with Larson. We couldn't afford a mutiny. Not now. Not here. I made a decision. "Larson, get a plasma cutter. We're going in." It took us the better part of an hour to cut through the reinforced door. O'Malley didn't make it easy, throwing whatever he could get his hands on. Tools, spare parts, even a fire extinguisher. The narrow corridor outside the engine room became a chaotic obstacle course of flying things. We finally managed to subdue him, but not before he took a swing at Larson with a heavy spanner connecting with the side of his head. Larson staggered, his hand going to the bleeding wound, but he stayed on his feet. O'Malley was screaming, thrashing, his eyes wild. The mark, I noticed, had spread across his face. We strapped O'Malley to a medical bed, sedated him with the ship's emergency medkit. He was still muttering, his words slurred, unintelligible, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. We were losing him to something we didn't understand. The ship was falling apart. The mission was falling apart, and I was starting to feel like I was falling apart too. I noticed it then, for the first time, a faint, violet mark on my temple, like a network of veins. 3 probes deployed, Larson reported, his voice rough. He was leaning heavily against a console, his hand still pressed to the wound on his head. The bleeding had stopped, but a dark bruise was forming around the injury. "Data's coming in, but it's a mess. McDonald's working on it." "Can we leave?" I asked, the question laced with a desperation I couldn't conceal. "Is the FTL drive functional?" Larson nodded. "Drive's fine, but we can't jump until the data download from the probes is complete. They're transmitting directly to the ship's main computer. If we interrupt the process now, we lose everything. All the data the probes collected will be gone, and that's the only thing Nova Galactic cares about. How long until we have a complete data set from the deployed probes?" "At this rate," Larson glanced at the readouts, "another 6 hours, maybe more, assuming they don't get swallowed by a gravity well or fried by another energy surge." 6 hours. An eternity. We were trapped, adrift in the shadow of the artifact, with a crew that was rapidly disintegrating and a ticking clock counting down to... We still didn't even know what we were dealing with. I found MacDonald at his console, bathed in the glow of the holographic displays. Data streams flowed across the screens, a chaotic arrangement of light and numbers. The mark covered most of his arms now, reaching up his neck, disappearing under his collar. He looked less human, more like some kind of living circuit board. "MacDonald, talk to me. What have you found?" He turned, his eyes unfocused, pupils dilated. "It's communicating," he whispered, his voice a distorted rasp. "Not in words, not in any language we understand, but it's showing me things." "What kind of things?" He pointed at the swirling data streams. "Glimpses of something vast. It's like trying to understand an ocean through a few drops of water. But I'm starting to see the patterns, the connections." He began to explain, his words tumbling over each other in a rush, interspersed with technical jargon I could barely follow. He spoke of the Taurus's energy field, not as a byproduct of some technology, but as a fundamental force, a kind of cosmic fabric comprising intertwined strands of gravity, time, and consciousness. He described the artifact as a cage, a prison built on a scale that dwarfed human comprehension, designed to contain something. "The entity," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "It's not a being of matter or energy, not as we understand it. It exists outside the normal dimensions, a consciousness without a physical form, a devourer of realities. It consumes not just matter but information, entire universes' worth, compressing them down into their most fundamental essence." This entity, which the crew had begun to refer to as the Void Eater, was undeniably malevolent. Its imprisonment wasn't an act of preservation, but of desperation. The civilization that built the Taurus had done so to protect the universe from the entity's insatiable hunger. A hunger that extended beyond physical matter to the very fabric of reality. They had sacrificed themselves to create the prison, knowing that even a temporary containment was better than annihilation. But the prison was weakening. The entity was reaching out, its influence seeping through the cracks, warping reality around the artifact and infecting our minds. "It's not just affecting our minds, Captain," MacDonald said, his voice filled with a terrible urgency. "It's rewriting them. The mark, it's a pathway. It allows the entity to access our neural networks, to reshape our thoughts, our memories, our very being. It's turning us into tools for its will." The effects on the crew were becoming more pronounced. O'Malley was lost in delusions, muttering about conspiracies and corporate plots, his fears amplified and twisted by the entity's influence, the mark on his face glowing like a malevolent brand. MacDonald was becoming a conduit, his mind increasingly open to the entity's influence, experiencing vivid hallucinations and visions of cosmic landscapes. He would babble about seeing the other side and the language of the void, the mark spreading across his arms like a network of alien circuitry. Larson was withdrawing into himself, becoming catatonic. He would stare blankly at nothing, occasionally whispering fragmented phrases, snatches of thoughts that were not his own, his body marked by the same insidious pattern. I saw it in their eyes, the growing emptiness, the fading spark of humanity. I felt it in myself, something alien worming its way into my mind, the mark on my temple throbbing in sync with the artifact's energy field. Visions flashed through my thoughts. Vast cosmic landscapes, swirling nebulae, the birth and death of stars. I saw glimpses of the entity, not as a physical being, but as a void, a singularity of infinite density, a presence of absolute malevolent will. It was terrifying, overwhelming. "We need to finish the data transfer," I said, trying to shake off the encroaching influence, focusing on the mission, on survival. "We need to get this information to Nova Galactic." "They won't understand," MacDonald mumbled, shaking his head. "They can't. It's beyond them. Beyond us." He let out a soft, chilling laugh. "The data means nothing. We are the data, and the transfer is nearly complete." "No." I gripped the edge of the console. "We have all 3 probes still transmitting. We just need a little more time." But time was the one thing we didn't have. As we watched, the signal from the first probe died, the data stream dissolving into static. We had lost the first one. The complex patterns on the screen simplified, becoming less defined, less detailed, like a high-resolution image degrading into a blurry mess. Larson, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke, his voice strangely calm. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" He was staring at the monitor, at the swirling patterns of the artifact's energy field. "Like a cosmic map. Every thread a star, every knot a galaxy." The mark on his face had spread, covering one side of his face in a web of violet lines. "Don't you see it, Captain? The dance of creation and destruction." He began to speak, a low, monotone stream of words that seemed to resonate deep within my bones, a language I had never heard before, yet somehow I understood. Then a few minutes later, the second probe died. The data stream from the second probe vanished, replaced by a flat line. The holographic representation of the artifact on the monitor further degraded, becoming a skeletal outline of its former complexity. Only the signal from the third probe remained. The download was nearing completion, the progress bar inching forward at a snail's pace. We were so close. We just needed a few more minutes. I was the only one left, the only one still fighting. O'Malley was lost in his delusions. Larson was spouting the void's nonsense, and MacDonald was a conduit for the entity, his mind a battleground between his own fading consciousness and the overwhelming presence of the Void Eater. The download reached 99%. I held my breath, my eyes fixed on the screen. Just a few more seconds, just a little more time. Then the final probe went silent. The screen had transformed from a dynamic display of data to a dull, lifeless grey. 99%. We were so close, so agonizingly close. It felt like the universe itself was holding its breath, poised on the precipice of some monumental shift. Then it hit me. Not a physical blow, but a surge, an influx, a torrent of raw, unfiltered information flooding my mind. It was as if the dam that held back the ocean of the artifact's knowledge had burst, and I was drowning in the deluge. The last 1% of the data, the missing piece of the puzzle, was pouring directly into my consciousness, using the mark on my temple as a conduit, a pathway forged by the entity itself. My knees buckled, and I collapsed to the floor, my body convulsing as my brain struggled to process the overwhelming torrent of information. It was far too much for any human mind to comprehend. Yet somehow, I was holding on, clinging to the edges of consciousness as the knowledge of the Taurus, the Void Eater, and the civilization who built it downloaded itself into me. Visions flooded my mind, not the fragmented glimpses I had experienced before, but a coherent, terrifying narrative. I saw the civilization that built the Taurus, the Shapers. They were not humanoid, not even remotely. They were beings of energy, existing in a realm of higher dimensions, their forms swirling like auroras, their thoughts a fusion of light and gravity. They were ancient, having witnessed the birth and death of countless stars, the rise and fall of 1,000 galactic empires. And I saw the entity, the Void Eater, not as a monster, but as a fundamental force of the universe, a cosmic predator born from the entropic decay of the first stars. It was not merely malevolent. It was hunger given form, a will to consume, to reduce all things to their base components. It was a necessary part of the cosmic cycle, a force of destruction that paved the way for new creation. But it was also a threat, a danger to the delicate balance of the universe, a force that, if left unchecked, would consume all of reality. The Shapers, in their vast wisdom, understood the threat. They had seen civilizations, entire realities fall victim to the Void Eater's hunger. They knew they couldn't destroy it. It was too fundamental, too deeply woven into the fabric of existence. So they did the only thing they could. They built a prison, a cage crafted from the very laws of physics, a structure that bridged the gap between normal space-time and a higher dimensional realm of their own making. They built the Taurus. It was anchored to our reality, perceptible and interactable, but its core functionality, the mechanism that contained the Void Eater, existed outside the confines of our four dimensions. The construction of the Taurus required the Shapers to sacrifice a part of their own reality, a portion of their higher dimensional existence, to create a vessel capable of containing the Void Eater. They poured their knowledge, their energy, their very essence into the artifact, forging a prison that could hold the entity for eternity. It was an act of ultimate selflessness, a sacrifice made to protect the rest of the universe. But the Void Eater was patient. It waited, it learned, it adapted. It began to probe the edges of its prison, to test the limits of the Taurus's power. It discovered a way to reach out, to extend its influence beyond the confines of its cage, using the fabric of space-time as a conduit. It found a way to touch the minds of lesser beings, to manipulate them, to turn them into its tools. The mark. It was a key, a tool for rewriting neural pathways, for turning sentient beings into puppets. The visions, the hallucinations, they were all part of the process, a way for the entity to break down the barriers of individual consciousness and merge with the minds of others to create a network of willing servants. And then, I understood. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The Void Eater wasn't just trying to escape its prison. It was trying to build a bridge made of minds, a network of consciousness that would allow it to extend its reach beyond the Taurus, to touch the universe once more. And we, the crew of the Farseeker, were to be the foundation stones of that bridge. The weight of that realization was crushing. It was a burden too great for any one person to bear. My mind, already reeling from the influx of data, began to shut down, to retreat from the overwhelming reality of what I had learned. The last thing I saw before the darkness closed in was Larsen's face. The mark covered almost his entire face now. He was speaking, the words of the void flowing from his lips, but there was a hint of something else in his eyes. A spark of the old Larsen, the stoic, disciplined security officer I once knew. "Don't worry, Captain," he said, his voice a distorted echo of its former self, yet carrying a strange, almost gentle tone. "It's almost over. The data is safe. I'll get you home." Then the world went black. When I awoke, it was to the antiseptic smell of a medical bay. I was strapped to a bed. My right arm was connected to a tangle of wires and tubes, feeding data into a nearby console. I was in a Nova Galactic facility, somewhere on Titan, if the corporate logos plastered all over the equipment were any indication. A man in a white lab coat, his face obscured by a reflective visor, approached my bed. "Welcome back, Captain Bishop. You've been through quite an ordeal." "Larsen," I croaked, my throat raw. "What happened? Where is he?" "Your colleague ensured your survival," the man replied. "He initiated the FTL jump sequence after you lost consciousness. The Farseeker arrived 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, Mr. Larsen did not survive the journey." He gestured towards the console where my arm was connected. "You've been under observation ever since. We've been monitoring the data stream." The data stream. The 1%. The missing piece. It was still inside me, a vast ocean of knowledge crammed into the confines of my human brain. "The artifact," I whispered. "The entity. What did you find?" The man in the lab coat tilted his head slightly. "The data you provided, incomplete as it is, has already revolutionized our understanding of physics, of the universe itself. As for the entity, let's just say it's a matter of ongoing research." "Ongoing research?" I repeated, a surge of anger coursing through me. "It's a threat, a cosmic horror that could consume everything." "Or," the man countered, "it's a source of unimaginable power. Power that, if properly harnessed, could elevate humanity to new heights. Imagine, Captain, a future where we control the very fabric of reality, where we shape the universe to our will." I stared at him, horrified. They didn't understand. They saw the Void Eater not as a threat, but as an opportunity, a tool to be exploited. They were playing with forces they couldn't possibly comprehend, forces that could easily destroy us all. I knew then that the data I carried was not just information, it was a warning, and I had to make sure that warning was heard. In the following days, they hooked me up to their machines, siphoning the remaining data from my mind, piecing together the puzzle of the Taurus, the Shapers, and the Void Eater. Through it all, I caught glimpses of the Shapers' civilization, their history, their motivations. They were not gods, as some might have believed, but a collective, a unified consciousness that spanned galaxies. They had dedicated their existence to understanding the universe, to unraveling its mysteries. They had discovered the Void Eater early in their history, recognizing it as an anomaly, a force of pure consumption that threatened the delicate balance of existence. They had tried to reason with it, to contain it, but it was beyond their control. The creation of the Taurus was their last, desperate act, a gamble that paid off, but at a terrible cost. They had sacrificed a portion of their own higher dimensional existence, a part of their very essence, to create the prison. They poured their collective consciousness, their knowledge, their energy into the artifact, forging a cage that could hold the entity. In doing so, they became inextricably linked to the Taurus, their consciousness echoing through the vast, multi-dimensional structure of the artifact. They became the guardians, the jailers, forever bound to their creation, not in a physical sense, but as an intrinsic part of its very being. I also saw in the fragments of data how the entity was imprisoned. The patterns on the Taurus's surface, they were not merely decorative, they were a complex, multi-dimensional algorithm, a mathematical equation that defined the boundaries of the prison, that held the Void Eater in check. The patterns were constantly changing, adapting to the entity's attempts to escape. It was a dynamic system, a living equation that was constantly being rewritten. A fail-safe, it seemed. In case the entity managed to compromise any part of the Taurus, the equation would rewrite itself, isolating the breach, maintaining the integrity of the prison. Finally, they deemed me stable enough for a conversation. A woman, far more polished and composed than the faceless technician from before, entered my room. She introduced herself as Director Fairfax, a high-ranking executive within Nova Galactic's research division. She had a calm, almost soothing demeanor, but her eyes betrayed a hint of something else. Ambition, perhaps, or maybe just hard pragmatism. "Captain Bishop," she began, her voice smooth and professional, "you've been through a remarkable ordeal. We're still trying to understand the full extent of what you encountered out there." "You mean the monster you almost unleashed upon the galaxy?" Fairfax smiled thinly. "We prefer to think of it as a potential breakthrough. The data you retrieved, incomplete as it is, suggests that the artifact, the Taurus as you call it, is a source of unimaginable power, a key to understanding the fundamental laws of the universe. It's a prison," I corrected her, "a cage built to contain something that should never be released." "And prisons can be opened, Captain," Fairfax countered. "Their power harnessed, their secrets unlocked." She then explained their proposal. My cooperation was no longer optional, not really. They needed me, my unique connection to the data, to complete the download, to unlock that final, crucial 1%. In return, I would receive full medical care and a generous compensation package. The bodies of O'Malley and Larson were recovered from the Farseeker. O'Malley, they said, had succumbed to massive neurological trauma, his brain essentially fried by the entity's influence. As for Larson, the official report stated that he had died a hero, sacrificing himself to save the ship and its sole surviving crew member, me. A gross understatement, but one that suited everyone's narratives. There was no mention of the alien words he had spoken. He was gone, his sacrifice reduced to a footnote in a corporate report. MacDonald was not mentioned. He was not on any of the crew manifests. I made it my mission to find out what happened to him. They couldn't hide him forever. He had to be somewhere. "We understand you have reservations, Captain," Fairfax continued, as if reading my thoughts. "But we believe that together we can achieve something extraordinary. We can unlock the secrets of the Taurus, harness its power for the benefit of humanity." I looked at her, at the calculating gleam in her eyes, and I knew that there was no reasoning with her. They were going to proceed regardless of the risks, driven by their insatiable hunger for knowledge and power. They saw the Void Eater not as a threat, but as an opportunity, and I was the key, the one who could unlock the door to their ambitions. I had a choice to make. I could refuse, fight them, try to warn the galaxy about the impending danger. But what good would that do? They had the resources, the influence, the power. I was just one man, a broken spacer with a head full of alien data. They would silence me, one way or another, and proceed with their plans, regardless of my objections. Or I could play along, cooperate, and try to influence them from within. I could use my unique position, my connection to the data, to learn more about the entity, about the Taurus, about the Shaper's intentions. I could try to find a way to stop them, to prevent them from making a mistake that could cost us all everything. It wasn't much of a choice. Not really. "All right, Director," I said, my voice heavy with resignation. Tell me what you need me to do." And so began my new mission. A mission not of exploration or retrieval, but of infiltration and sabotage. I became their consultant, their guide through the depths of the alien data. I helped them decipher the complex equations, the intricate algorithms that describe the Taurus's construction, its function, its purpose. They built a new device, a neural interface far more sophisticated than anything I had seen before. It was designed to connect directly to my brain, to extract the remaining data, to translate it into a format their computers could understand. They called it the Bridge, a fitting name, considering the entity's original intent. The procedure was painless, at least physically. I lay strapped to a table, my head encased in a network of sensors, while the machine extracted the last fragments of the Void Eater's knowledge from my mind. And as the data flowed, I saw, once again, the vastness of the entity, the terrible beauty of the Shaper's creation, and the chilling implications of what Nova Galactic was about to unleash. The final download began, and I braced myself, for I knew that whatever emerged from the Taurus's data would change humanity forever, for better or for worse.